This snake tattoo is just like my dad's." The words left Allison's lips before she could stop them, hanging in the air between her and the most dangerous man in the city. Crystal glasses froze mid-clink as the entire room fell silent, all eyes darting between the young waitress and their host. Philip Kingston's hand instinctively moved to the distinctive cobra coiled around a dagger on his neck, his expression shifting from composed host to something feral. His dark eyes narrowed as he studied the girl's face, searching for deceit in features that suddenly seemed hauntingly familiar. "Your father?" His voice cut through the tension, barely above a whisper, yet commanding complete attention. "Impossible." The crystal tumbler in his grip trembled slightly, betraying the iron control he prided himself on maintaining. Allison clutched her serving tray tighter, realizing her catastrophic mistake as security personnel materialized around her. The grand ballroom of Kingston Manor suddenly felt suffocating, the chandeliers too bright, the guests' whispers too loud as they watched the drama unfold. "I'm sorry, sir. I shouldn't have spoken out of turn." Her voice quivered despite her attempts to appear professional, years of serving the wealthy elite failing her in this crucial moment. The photo of her father with the identical tattoo flashed in her mind, the only memento she had of him. Philip gestured sharply, dismissing the approaching guards with a flick of his wrist. "Everyone continue enjoying yourselves," he commanded, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Ms." He paused, awaiting her name with the intensity of a predator assessing prey. "Allison Parker, sir." She straightened her posture, refusing to cower despite the tremor in her voice. Something in his expression had shifted from threatening to curious, almost vulnerable for the briefest moment before the steel returned. "Ms. Parker, I believe we should continue this conversation privately." He placed his barely touched whiskey on a nearby table, adjusting his immaculate suit jacket. "After the event concludes, come to my study. Gregory will escort you." It wasn't a request. The remainder of the gala passed in a blur for Allison, her hands moving automatically as she served drinks and appetizers. The weight of curious glances followed her across the marble floors as guests whispered behind manicured hands, creating theories about what they'd witnessed. At precisely midnight, as the last guest departed in a fleet of luxury vehicles, Gregory appeared silently beside her. "Mr. Kingston is ready for you now," he stated flatly, leading her through corridors lined with priceless artwork and antique weapons displays. The mahogany door to Philip's study swung open to reveal a room that exuded power and old money, leather-bound books lining the walls, a massive desk commanding the space, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate's pristine grounds. Philip stood with his back to her, silhouetted against the moonlight. "Your full name is Allison Marie Parker, born July 14, 2004 at Westlake Memorial." He spoke without turning, his voice eerily calm as he recited facts about her life that should have been impossible for him to know. Raised by a single mother, Diane Parker, in Brookside. Allison's heart hammered against her ribs, fight or flight instincts screaming as she realized the depth of his resources. "How do you know all this?" she demanded, surprising herself with the strength in her voice despite her trembling hands. He turned slowly, firelight from the hearth casting dramatic shadows across his face. "The tattoo you mentioned. Describe it in detail." His tone had softened, almost pleading beneath the command, making him suddenly seem human, rather than the monster whispered about in news reports. A cobra wrapped around a silver dagger, the snake's scales detailed with hints of emerald, a small crown above its head. Allison described the image burned into her memory, watching as all color drained from Philip's face with each precise detail she recalled. Philip moved to a painting on the far wall, swinging it aside to reveal a concealed safe. His fingers worked the combination with practiced efficiency before retrieving a worn leather journal and a yellowed photograph, which he placed on the desk between them without a word. The photograph showed a younger Philip, with his arm around a beautiful woman, both smiling against the backdrop of a sunset beach. On her wrist and his neck were matching tattoos, the exact cobra and dagger design that had sparked this confrontation. "Your mother," he whispered. Allison reached for the photo with trembling fingers, studying the face of a woman she recognized yet somehow didn't. "This is my mom, but I've never seen her look so happy." The realization crashed over her like a wave, connections forming that seemed too impossible to voice. 22 years ago, I fell in love with Diane when she was volunteering at a clinic where one of my men was treated. Philip's voice had lost its commanding edge, replaced by something raw and unfamiliar. "We kept our relationship secret from my father, who controlled the family business." He poured 2 glasses of amber liquid, sliding one toward Allison before continuing. When she discovered she was pregnant, we made plans to leave everything behind. New identities, a new life far from here. His knuckles whitened around his glass as memories surfaced. The night before we were supposed to leave, my father discovered our plans. Philip's jaw tightened, old rage flickering behind his eyes. He threatened to kill her and our unborn child unless she disappeared permanently from my life. He showed her evidence of what happened to others who had crossed him. Allison stood frozen, unable to reconcile the criminal kingpin before her with the father she'd imagined throughout her childhood. She told me you died in a car accident when I was still a baby. The lie that had shaped her entire life suddenly seemed both cruel and merciful. She told me she lost the baby, that the stress of my father's threats caused a miscarriage. Philip's voice cracked slightly, decades of grief rising to the surface. I searched for her for years, but she'd vanished completely. Eventually, I stopped looking. He opened the journal to reveal a sonogram image tucked between yellowed pages, protected like a sacred relic. This was the only evidence I had that you ever existed. His fingers hovered over the image, not quite touching it, as though afraid it might dissolve. My mother raised me alone, working double shifts as a nurse to put me through school. Allison's thoughts raced through childhood memories, recalibrating everything she thought she knew. She always changed the subject when I asked about the tattoo in the photos, saying it was from a different life. Philip moved to the window, creating distance as though afraid of her reaction. Your mother made an impossible choice to protect you from my world. His reflection in the glass showed a vulnerability that contradicted everything she'd heard about the ruthless crime boss. Does she know you found me? Allison asked, her voice barely audible above the crackling fire. The question hung in the air between them, laden with implications neither was prepared to face fully. The past and present collided in this moment of revelation. Philip turned, decision visibly forming in his eyes. No, and we need to speak with her immediately. He reached for his phone, hesitating before dialing. My father is gone, but the enemies I've made in building this empire won't hesitate to use you against me once they discover who you are. Dawn broke over the horizon as Philip's security team escorted Diane Parker into the estate, her face a mask of terror, until she saw Allison waiting in the grand foyer. Mother and daughter embraced while Philip observed from a distance, allowing them their moment before the storm that would follow. You promised you would keep her away from all this, Diane finally spoke, addressing Philip directly with a mixture of anger and long-buried affection. 20 years had changed them both, yet the connection between them remained palpably electric, charging the air around them. I didn't break that promise. Fate did. Philip gestured toward the study where they could speak privately, away from the curious ears of his staff. When she recognized my tattoo, the past found us whether we were ready or not. The three sat in waited silence before Diane finally spoke, tears streaming down her face. When your father showed me those photos, the people who had crossed him, what happened to their families, I couldn't risk our baby. Her hands twisted nervously in her lap, reliving the terror. He offered me a deal. Disappear completely. Tell you I lost the baby, and he would ensure we both lived. Diane's voice strengthened as she continued, maternal protection flaring. I changed my name, moved across the country, built a new life centered entirely around keeping Allison safe. Allison absorbed every word, witnessing her mother transform from the quiet, reserved woman she knew into someone fierce and determined. You did all this to protect me from a grandfather I never knew existed? The revelation of an entire hidden family history overwhelmed her. Old man Kingston was a monster, but he's been dead for 12 years. Philip leaned forward, elbows on his knees as he addressed both women. I've transformed his crude criminal network into something legitimate, mostly. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Diane scoffed, years of anger bubbling to the surface. Your empire is built on blood money, Phil. I've seen the news reports about your business rivals who mysteriously disappear. Her voice carried the weight of old arguments, as though they'd never stopped having them. The world I operate in doesn't allow for clean hands, but everything I've built was meant to be yours someday. Both of yours. Philip's admission hung in the air, the revelation of decades spent building a legacy for a family he thought lost forever. A sharp knock interrupted them as Gregory entered with an urgent report. Sir, there's been unusual activity around Ms. Parker's apartment. Our surveillance team spotted Costa's men watching the building. His professional tone couldn't mask the gravity of the situation. Philip's demeanor transformed instantly from vulnerable father to calculating strategist. Costa must have connected the dots already. He's always had spies at my events. He turned to Diane and Allison, his expression grim. You can't go home. It's not safe for either of you anymore. Allison watched the interaction with growing alarm, the reality of her new situation becoming clear. Who's Costa? Why would he be interested in me? The question was directed at Philip, but it was her mother who answered, surprising both of them with her knowledge. Ricardo Costa, your father's main competitor in both legitimate and illegitimate business ventures. Diane's familiarity with the criminal landscape revealed how closely she'd monitored Philip's world from afar, despite claiming to have left it behind completely. Philip studied Diane with newfound respect before turning to Allison. Costa has spent years looking for leverage against me. A daughter I never knew about? That's exactly the kind of weakness he's been waiting to exploit. His fingers drummed the desk as he considered their options. So what happens now? Allison asked, straightening her shoulders as she looked between the two people who had created her, shaped her life through both presence and absence. Do we run again, or do we fight? Philip and Diane exchanged a look charged with 2 decades of unspoken communication, somehow still able to read each other perfectly. Neither, they answered in unison, the synchronicity of their response bridging the years they'd spent apart. We neutralize the threat, Philip continued, rising to activate the security panel hidden behind a bookshelf. A holographic display illuminated the room, showing surveillance feeds from across the city, including Diane's modest home and Allison's university campus. Diane moved beside him, studying the technology with a nurse's analytical eye. Your security systems have improved since the days of simple alarm codes and guard rotations, she noted, a hint of admiration breaking through her defenses as her fingers traced the air above the display. Allison watched her parents working together, the weight of their shared history evident in each unspoken communication. This feels surreal, like watching 2 strangers who somehow know each other better than they should after 20 years apart, she whispered, more to herself than to them. The doors burst open as a team of security specialists entered, led by a stern woman whose tactical gear couldn't disguise her military bearing. Sir, Costa's men have moved into position at 4 locations surrounding your estate, she reported, nodding respectfully to Diane and Allison. Execute Protocol Nightshade Vera, Philip commanded, receiving a crisp nod before the woman departed. He turned to Diane, his expression softening slightly. She's former Special Forces, the best security chief I've ever had, which is why I'm trusting her with your safety. Diane's eyes narrowed as decades of buried emotions surfaced. So, this is our life now? Armed guards and safe houses? The exact future I ran from to give our daughter a normal life. Her voice trembled not with fear, but with righteous anger at the disruption of everything she'd built. Normal was never an option for us, Di. Philip used the old nickname unconsciously, causing Diane to flinch. My father made sure of that the moment he threatened you. But at least now we face this threat together instead of isolated and vulnerable. The security monitors flashed red as perimeter alarms activated, signaling the arrival of unwanted visitors. Philip's phone buzzed with a message from Vera, confirming that Costa himself was approaching the main gate, requesting an audience rather than launching an attack. He wants to negotiate, Philip muttered, scrolling through the message details. That's unexpected. Costa usually prefers bullets to conversations. His brow furrowed as he considered the implications, the criminal strategist visible beneath the veneer of legitimacy. Diane gripped his arm suddenly, her nails digging into expensive fabric. Don't you dare meet with him, Phil. I remember what happened the last time you negotiated with rivals. 3 weeks in intensive care while your father's men hunted down everyone involved. Allison stepped forward, asserting herself between her parents with newfound confidence. I should be part of this decision. It's my life too now. Her voice carried a strength that momentarily silenced both adults, neither accustomed to being challenged. The security panel chimed as Costa's sleek black vehicle pulled through the front gates, having been granted temporary access. Philip straightened his tie, decision made as he looked between the 2 women who represented his greatest vulnerability and his greatest strength. We meet him together, as a family. His words hung in the air, testing a concept none of them had experienced before. Costa expects to find weakness he can exploit, but instead, he'll face a united front that shows exactly why the Kingstons have survived for 3 generations. Diane instinctively moved closer to Allison, maternal protection overriding her personal feelings toward Philip. If he so much as looks at her wrong, I'll show him exactly what an emergency room nurse knows about human anatomy, she promised, steel in her voice matching Philip's own resolve. The grand ballroom had been transformed from elegant party venue to strategic meeting ground. security personnel positioned discreetly at every entrance. Riccardo Costa entered with only 2 bodyguards, his expensive Italian suit and silver-streaked hair projecting cultured refinement that belied his ruthless reputation. "Kingston," Costa acknowledged with a slight nod before his gaze shifted to Allison and Diane, assessment clear in his calculated stare. "Family reunion? How touching." His accent carried traces of his Portuguese heritage, words precise and deliberately chosen for maximum impact. Philip positioned himself slightly in front of Diane and Allison, a subtle protective gesture not lost on Costa. "State your business and leave, Riccardo. Your surveillance of my daughter's apartment has already violated our territorial agreement of 2018. Costa smiled, the expression never reaching his cold eyes. "Daughter, how interesting that after all these years in business together, I'm only now learning about her existence." He circled them slowly, analyzing the family dynamics with predatory interest. "My father hid many things from his associates, Allison included," Philip replied evenly, watching Costa's every movement while maintaining an outward calm. "Now that circumstances have changed, I'm merely reuniting with family that was kept from me." Costa stopped directly in front of Allison, studying her features with uncomfortable intensity. "The resemblance is remarkable. You have your father's eyes, my dear. Tell me, did you know who he was before yesterday? Or was it truly the tattoo that revealed everything?" Allison met his gaze without flinching, something inherited from both parents flaring to life within her. "My relationship with my father is none of your business, Mr. Costa." The formal address carried no respect, only a boundary being firmly established. Costa laughed, genuinely amused by her defiance. "She certainly inherited your backbone, Kingston." He turned his attention back to Philip, his expression hardening. "But sentiment makes men weak, and weakness in our world is quickly exploited. Is that a threat?" Diane stepped forward, maternal instinct overwhelming caution. 20 years of protecting her child had honed her ability to recognize danger, and Costa's carefully chosen words set off every internal alarm she possessed. Costa's bodyguards tensed at her movement, hands shifting toward concealed weapons before their boss waved them down. "Not a threat, Mrs. Kingston, or whatever name you've been using. Merely an observation from someone who values family bonds himself." The atmosphere charged with dangerous potential, as Costa produced a small velvet box from his pocket, extending it toward Allison. "A gift to commemorate this touching reunion. In my culture, we celebrate when families are restored." His smile remained predatory. Philip intercepted the box before Allison could reach for it, opening it himself to reveal an elegant silver bracelet adorned with a small cobra charm. "How thoughtful," he remarked dryly, recognizing the deliberate provocation in Costa's choice of symbol. "Consider it a peace offering and acknowledgement of changed circumstances." Costa backed away, having accomplished whatever assessment he came for. "Family should be protected at all costs, something I'm sure we both agree on, Kingston." As Costa and his men departed, Vera's security team swept the bracelet for tracking devices or other threats. "It's clean, sir," she reported after thorough examination. "Though the symbolism is clear enough, he's marking her as someone he's aware of." Allison took the bracelet, studying the intricate snake charm with mixed emotions. "So I've gone from anonymous college student to pawn in some criminal chess game overnight." She looked between her parents, searching for reassurance neither could honestly provide. Philip's phone buzzed with an urgent message, his expression darkening as he read the screen. "Costa's men are mobilizing across the city. This visit was just a distraction." He turned to Vera, issuing rapid instructions. "Lock down all business interests and move our people to secure locations." Diane watched the transformation in horror, seeing the man she'd once loved disappear beneath the crime boss persona she'd fled from. "This is exactly why I left, Phil. 1 minute you're talking about family, the next you're commanding an army like your father before you. The difference is, I'm doing this to protect our daughter, not control her." Philip's response was quiet, but intense, years of regret and determination evident in every word. "I never became my father, Di. I built something different. Something that could have been ours." Allison absorbed their exchange, pieces of her identity shifting and reforming with each revelation. "I need to understand exactly what I've stepped into," she declared, interrupting their rekindled argument. "No more half-truths or protected versions of reality." Philip led them to his private office deep within the mansion, a room fortified against both physical and electronic intrusion. Wall-mounted screens displayed global operations spanning industries from shipping to technology, real estate to private security, the true extent of the Kingston Empire. I inherited a crude criminal organization focused on traditional rackets. Gambling, protection, smuggling, he explained, activating a secure terminal. Over 20 years, I've transformed it into a legitimate global conglomerate while maintaining strategic underground connections. Diane scoffed, gesturing toward the security footage showing armed personnel moving through Kingston properties. You've put a respectable face on it, but the foundation is still built on fear and control. Her words carried the weight of old arguments never fully resolved. Allison studied the operations map with analytical precision, her university business courses providing unexpected context. These shipping routes through Southeast Asia, they're too efficient to be entirely legitimate. She pointed to patterns only someone with her father's strategic mind would notice. Smart girl, Philip acknowledged with unexpected pride. 15% of our cargo contains items that bypass certain regulatory obstacles. The profits from those operations fund our legitimate businesses, which employ over 20,000 people worldwide. The screen shifted to display Costa's competing operations, highlighting areas of overlap and potential conflict. Ricardo wants what I've built, but lacks the vision to create it himself. Philip's assessment was clinical, detached from the personal hatred that defined their rivalry. So I'm leverage, a weakness he can exploit to gain advantage, Allison concluded, processing her new reality with remarkable composure. What's his most likely move now that he knows about me? She addressed the question to both parents, recognizing their complementary expertise. Philip and Diane exchanged glances, their thoughts aligning despite years apart. He'll investigate your life completely, Diane began, drawing on her years of vigilance. Friends, roommates, professors, anyone who could be manipulated or threatened to gain access to you. Simultaneously, he'll probe my organization for reactions, testing how resources are reallocated to protect you, Philip continued seamlessly. He's looking for patterns that reveal priorities and vulnerabilities in our security structure. Vera entered with updated intelligence, her tablet displaying surveillance images from across the city. Costa's men have established observation points near Ms. Parker's university campus and have approached 2 of her classmates for questioning, she reported efficiently. They found Zoe and Hank? Allison paled, concerned for her friend's overwhelming self-preservation. They don't know anything about this. They're innocent. The implications of her ordinary life colliding with this dangerous world suddenly became concrete, rather than abstract. Philip nodded to Vera, unspoken instructions passing between them before she departed. Your friends will be protected discreetly, he assured Allison. Costa won't harm civilians unnecessarily. It attracts unwanted attention from authorities we both prefer to avoid. Diane paced the room, medical training translating to practical solutions. We need to create distance between Allison and anyone vulnerable. Semester abroad program, family emergency, something plausible that explains her sudden absence without raising suspicions. Academic leave is too passive, Philip countered, strategic mind assessing options. Costa would simply wait, maintaining surveillance until she reappears. He turned to Allison, considering her with new respect. We need something bolder that changes the fundamental equation. Allison straightened her posture, decision forming in her eyes. Then we use me as bait, but on our terms. Her suggestion silenced the room, her parents united in immediate rejection, despite recognizing the strategic merit of her thinking. Absolutely not, Diane stated firmly, maternal protection overriding tactical considerations. We didn't protect you for 20 years, just to deliberately place you in Costa's crosshairs now. Her voice cracked slightly, revealing the emotional toll of their situation. I'm not suggesting I walk into danger unprotected, Allison clarified, intelligence clearly inherited from both parents evident in her reasoning. I mean, we control the narrative instead of reacting to Costa's moves. We decide when and how he learns about me. Philip and Diane exchanged a look that communicated volumes, the unspoken connection between them rekindling, despite years of separation and distrust. Costa operates through information asymmetry, knowing more about his opponents than they know about him, Philip explained, strategist mind already plotting countermoves. By controlling your introduction, we seize that advantage for ourselves. Philip studied his daughter with newfound respect, recognizing the strategic mind that mirrored his own. What exactly are you proposing? He leaned forward, curiosity overriding his initial protective instinct as he saw the determined glint in Allison's eyes. A formal introduction to society, the unveiling of the Kingston air that neither Costa nor anyone else can ignore. Allison's voice grew stronger as her plan took shape. A public statement that transforms me from vulnerability to strength, From target to protected successor. Diane shook her head vehemently, years of caution not easily discarded. The moment you step into the spotlight as a Kingston, every enemy your father has ever made will know exactly who to target. Her hands trembled slightly as she faced the prospect of her worst fears materializing. They already know, Mom. Allison's gentle response carried the weight of their new reality. Costa's surveillance proves that secrecy isn't protecting me anymore. It's just keeping me ignorant and unprepared for threats that already exist. Philip moved to his desk, fingers flying across the keyboard as he accessed secured files. If we pursue this strategy, it must be comprehensive. The screens shifted to display social calendars, business registers, and property holdings. The introduction must be believable, beyond reproach. We need a backstory that explains my absence without implicating Mom in any deception, Allison suggested, mind working through complications. Something that protects her reputation while justifying why I'm only now entering the Kingston world. Diane watched her daughter transform before her eyes, the analytical precision and strategic thinking unmistakably inherited from Philip. A private European education, perhaps? Many wealthy families keep their children out of the public eye during their formative years. Switzerland has several exclusive academies that pride themselves on absolute discretion, Philip confirmed, already building the digital trail that would support their fabricated history. Records can be created showing your attendance from childhood through university. Allison paced the room, continuing to develop the narrative. We'll need photographs, family vacations, graduation ceremonies, holidays at Kingston properties. She turned to her father, practical concerns emerging. Can your people create these convincingly? The Kingston Digital Security Team includes former intelligence operatives specializing in precisely this type of documentation. Philip allowed himself a small smile at his daughter's thorough approach. By tomorrow, we'll have a complete photographic history of your life as a Kingston. Vera returned with a tablet displaying sketches from the Kingston's personal designer. Wardrobe options for Ms. Parker's public debut, sir. The screen showed elegant outfits befitting an heiress to a global empire, each subtly incorporating the snake motif that had become synonymous with Kingston power. These are beautiful, but missing something essential. Allison studied the designs with a critical eye before turning to her mother. I need to honor both sides of my heritage, the strength I inherit from the Kingstons, and the compassion I learned from you, Mom. Diane's expression softened at her daughter's words, pride briefly overshadowing fear. Your compassion comes from within, Allison. I just helped you nurture what was already there. She squeezed her daughter's hand. A lifetime of love communicated in the simple gesture. The Kingston Foundation's medical initiatives, Philip suggested unexpectedly. We could position Allison as having been involved in our humanitarian work abroad, explaining her interest in healthcare, while connecting to your nursing background, Diane looked genuinely surprised. You have medical initiatives? Since when does the Kingston Empire care about humanitarian causes? The skepticism in her voice couldn't completely mask her interest, especially when Philip activated a display showing clinics across developing nations. Since I realized I might someday need to prove to you that I became a different man than my father. Philip's quiet admission hung in the air between them. Decades of regret and hope compressed into a single sentence that shifted something fundamental in their dynamic. Allison observed the moment between her parents, understanding blooming as pieces of her identity clicked into place. So I'm officially becoming Allison Kingston, heiress to a global empire and philanthropic foundation, recently returned from educational pursuits abroad to take my place in the family business. Not just any business, Philip clarified, determination hardening his features. The legitimate business only. I'll accelerate the timeline for separating our operations completely. Kingston Industries will be above reproach before you take your position within it. Allison considered the reflection of herself in the darkened window, imagining the weight of the Kingston name she would soon carry. We'll need to address the educational gap. My actual university transcripts won't match the fabricated Swiss Academy records we're creating. The Kingston Scholarship Foundation has backdated donations to your actual university, Philip explained, pulling up financial records on his tablet. Your academic achievements remain your own, just reframed within our constructed narrative as special independent studies approved by the European institutions. Vera entered with security protocols for Allison's debut, outlining measures invisible to guests, but comprehensive in coverage. We've engaged specialized teams from 3 separate firms to ensure redundant protection layers, and facial recognition will scan for any unauthorized individuals attempting to infiltrate the event. Diane crossed her arms, not entirely convinced. And what about Costa and the other threats? A public debut makes Allison visible but doesn't neutralize the danger. Her practical concern cut through the excitement of planning, grounding them in the reality of their situation. 3 weeks later, the grand ballroom of Kingston Manor sparkled with crystal chandeliers and the quiet hum of the city's elite gathering for what society columns had billed as the social event of the decade. Security personnel disguised as waitstaff monitored every entrance while Vera's team conducted discreet weapons screenings. Allison stood before the full-length mirror in what had become her suite, barely recognizing the sophisticated woman who gazed back at her. The custom gown incorporated subtle emerald accents that echoed the snake tattoo, while a delicate bracelet bearing the Kingston crest adorned her wrist. "You look beautiful," Diane said from the doorway, her own elegant attire a striking departure from the practical scrubs that had defined her for 2 decades. "And terrified, which shows you haven't completely lost your sense despite all this luxury." Philip appeared behind Diane, resplendent in a tailored tuxedo that emphasized his commanding presence. "Every person downstairs has been thoroughly vetted, including Costa and his associates." His tone carried the confidence of a man who had prepared for every contingency. "Is the package secured?" Allison asked quietly, referring to the final component of their plan, the element that had initially caused fierce disagreement between her parents before they recognized its necessity. The true sacrifice that would change everything. Philip nodded solemnly, hand unconsciously moving to the inside pocket of his jacket, where a small flash drive contained 20 years of carefully documented criminal enterprises. "Ready for deployment the moment Costa makes his anticipated move against us." Diane stepped forward to adjust Allison's necklace, her fingers lingering protectively. "Remember, if anything feels wrong, any hint of danger, you give the signal and security will immediately extract you." The rehearsed contingency plans had been practiced repeatedly over the past weeks. "I'm ready," Allison assured them both, surprising herself with how true the statement felt. Something had awakened within her during these weeks of preparation, a strength she hadn't known she possessed, inherited from both the mother who protected her and the father she was only beginning to know. The family descended the grand staircase together, conversations hushing as hundreds of eyes turned toward them. Philip raised his hand for silence, the room immediately complying in a display of the respect and fear he commanded within this world. "Distinguished guests, I thank you for joining us tonight for what is, without question, the most important moment of my life." His voice carried effortlessly across the silent room, years of authority evident in every measured word. "Tonight, I introduce you to my daughter and heir, Allison Kingston." Polite applause rippled through the crowd, curiosity and calculation visible on many faces as they assessed this unexpected development in the Kingston dynasty. Costa stood near the center of the room, his expression carefully neutral while his eyes missed nothing. Allison stepped forward as rehearsed, her voice clear and confident despite the thundering of her heart. "It's an honor to finally take my place within the Kingston legacy, particularly our foundation's medical initiatives, which have always been my passion." The choreographed evening proceeded flawlessly, Allison moving through the crowd with practiced ease, accepting congratulations and deflecting subtle probes into her background with the prepared responses they had meticulously crafted. Philip remained within sight but allowed her the space to establish herself. Costa finally approached during a momentary lull, champagne flute in hand and calculated charm in place. "Ms. Kingston, you've certainly made an impressive debut." His gaze flickered between her and Philip, assessing the dynamics with predatory interest. "I look forward to seeing how you influence your father's diverse business interests. Mr. Costa, I believe you misunderstand my role." Allison's smile remained pleasant, while her eyes hardened imperceptibly. "I'm focused exclusively on our legitimate enterprises and humanitarian efforts. The old ways of doing business are precisely that. Old." Costa leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her ears. "Such naivety is charming but dangerous in our world, Miss Kingston. Ask your father what happened to the Rodriguez family when they attempted a similar moral evolution." Philip appeared at Allison's side with perfect timing, champagne flutes in hand, and a warning glance directed at Costa. "My daughter understands exactly how evolution works, Ricardo. Those who fail to adapt become extinct." The threat beneath his cordial tone was unmistakable. A subtle vibration from Philip's watch signaled the approaching federal agents, his expression betraying nothing as he clinked glasses with Costa. "To new beginnings and old endings," he toasted cryptically, positioning himself strategically to witness his rival's downfall. while maintaining plausible deniability. Costa's smile tightened at the subtle rebuke, his response interrupted by a commotion near the main entrance as federal agents in tactical gear poured into the ballroom. The raid had begun exactly as Philip had arranged through anonymous channels, the flash drive's contents providing irrefutable evidence of Costa's criminal operations, while carefully excluding Kingston involvement. Ricardo Costa, you're under arrest for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy charges, announced the lead agent, producing a warrant as his team moved efficiently through the stunned crowd. We have a warrant to seize all electronic devices and documents in your possession. Morning sunlight streamed through the windows of a modest lakeside cabin far from Kingston Manor, illuminating Diane as she prepared breakfast, while Allison and Philip reviewed news reports of Costa's spectacular downfall. The headlines proclaimed the end of one of the country's largest criminal enterprises, with no mention of Kingston involvement. Your sacrifice was greater than I expected, Diane admitted, placing coffee before Philip, with a gentleness that spoke of thawing reservations. Turning over evidence that implicated Costa while dismantling your own criminal connections. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. Philip's fingers unconsciously traced the snake tattoo on his neck, the symbol that had started their journey back to each other. Some empires need to fall so others can rise properly. His gaze shifted to Allison, pride evident in his expression. The legitimate Kingston businesses will thrive under her leadership someday. Allison scrolled through messages on her secure phone, university administrators having readily accepted her request for a semester's leave following the public revelation of her identity. The Kingston Foundation has received 12 partnership proposals since the gala, all focused on expanding our medical outreach programs. Your mother should head those initiatives, Philip suggested, surprising both women with the sincerity in his voice. Her experience as a nurse provides exactly the practical insight most foundations lack when implementing programs in underserved communities. Diane paused, coffee pot suspended midair as she processed his words. You're offering me a position in your company? The question carried layers of meaning beyond the simple inquiry, implications of trust rebuilding and possible reconciliation after decades of separation. I'm offering you the chance to transform what was once built through intimidation into something that genuinely helps people. Philip met her gaze directly, vulnerability visible beneath his customary confidence. The three of us working together, each bringing different strengths to create something better than what came before. Allison watched the exchange with cautious optimism, sensing the tentative reconnection forming between her parents. Mom's medical knowledge, Dad's business acumen, and my fresh perspective. We could actually make a difference instead of just accumulating wealth and power. Vera's arrival interrupted the moment, her usual professional demeanor softened by the casual setting. The transition team reports all Kingston holdings have been successfully reorganized under the new corporate structure. She handed Philip a tablet displaying complex organizational charts. All ties to previous operations have been severed. And the men who worked for us? Philip's question revealed continuing concern for those who had served loyally, regardless of the questionable nature of their service. Have they received the promised settlements and legitimate employment opportunities? All former personnel have been transitioned to security positions within Kingston Industries, or provided retirement packages as requested. Vera's response earned an approving nod from Philip before she discreetly withdrew, leaving the family to continue their conversation. So this is really happening, Diane mused, taking the seat beside Philip rather than across from him as she had since their reunion. After 20 years running from this world, I'm willingly stepping back into it, albeit a supposedly reformed version. Philip's hand hesitantly covered hers, the gesture tentative after so many years apart. This version includes your influence and oversight, which is precisely what was missing before. The sincerity in his voice bridged decades of separation, offering something neither had dared hope for. Allison studied the snake tattoo visible on her father's neck, understanding now the complex history it represented. I've been thinking about getting one myself. Not exactly the same, but a variation that honors both of you and what we've been through. Absolutely not, her parents responded in perfect unison, their synchronized objection drawing surprised laughter from all three, perhaps the first moment of genuine, uncomplicated joy they had shared as a family. The sound hung in the air like a promise of possibilities to come. Outside the cabin, Vera's security team maintained their vigilant perimeter, protecting the family as they navigated their new reality. Within those protected walls, three people who had been separated by fear, lies, and necessity began the delicate process of becoming a family. Different than they might have been, but perhaps stronger for having been forged through fire. The morning news continued reporting Costa's downfall in the background, as Philip outlined plans for expanding the Kingston Foundation's reach. Diane offered practical insights from her years in healthcare, and Allison contributed fresh perspectives from her generation. 3 distinct voices finding harmony in shared purpose. "I never imagined this outcome when I recognized your tattoo at the gala," Allison admitted, the memory of that fateful night now transformed from terrifying to foundational. One impulsive comment changing everything, revealing the truth after 20 years of secrets. The snake tattoo had evolved from a symbol of rebellion in their youth to something more profound, a family crest etched in skin rather than metal or stone. Diane tentatively reached out, her fingers tracing the outline on Philip's neck for the first time in decades. "We should establish a permanent foundation headquarters separate from Kingston Industries," Allison suggested, already sketching a building design on her napkin. Something welcoming and transparent, the opposite of the intimidating corporate towers associated with the family name. Philip watched his daughter's enthusiasm with quiet amazement, recognizing pieces of himself and Diane woven together in her passionate approach to their future. "The Kingston legacy reimagined through your vision might actually become something I'm proud to leave behind," he admitted, decades of regret giving way to unexpected hope. Thank you all for following this incredible journey of truth, redemption, and family. If you enjoyed this story of a tattoo that reunited a family torn apart by danger and secrets, write in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who appreciates powerful family drama. Your support means everything and helps me continue bringing these emotional stories straight to you every week.